Something about Davey Allison and Kyle Petty. I've often, in Dale Earnhardt Jr., Kyle Petty. I've often thought when those guys run, I was a lot of times I was ashamed. I mean, we had a few good runs. You know, we had a few top tens, and you know, we'd have times in the race we'd have a new set of tires, and very few times we would run with the leaders for 20, 30 laps and they'd get away. So we got to do it for a little bit, but I've often thought I never had to live up by, I was thinking Richard Petty and Davey, and Richard Petty, Kyle's son, and Bob Allison and Davey. I've often thought, man, what did they have to live up to? I mean, you think if your dad was Richard Petty, if I'd have went there and I'd have won 3 races in a year, they'd said, well, your dad won 20. So when you look at it that way, those guys had something I didn't have, and they had the fame, the fortune, all the sponsors, what they want, but, you know, they had something to prove, and I really didn't have anything to prove. So you kind of weigh it out. Yeah, it would have been great being like them, but I've often wondered, like Dale Earnhardt Jr., and I'm thinking, Dale Earnhardt Jr., can't you imagine the pressure he was under being Dale Earnhardt's son? And I just can imagine it was just like being in a pressure cooker. But in 95 or 6, we went to these late models in '88. It was a turnaround. It took me, you know, we're talking about a 3,200-pound car, you know, shorter wheelbase, 350, 375 horsepower. It was a whole turnaround from what I've been running. So when we started going places, you know, we run like 8th or 9th, and the next week we was 5th, and next week we was 3rd. And I told the guys, we need to go up here and rent a track and practice all day. And I bought a new set of tires. We went to practice. Next race we go up, we win. So the next thing you know, we're winning, we're 2nd, we win, we're 3rd, we're 2nd, we win. We go to Martinsville, we win, get grandfather clock, go to Wilkesboro. We get to ride the elevator and everything today, and I said, man, this is what it's all about. And that's where comes the helmet, and that was when Winston used to sponsor the late model in the Cup Series, and you know, they're the best thing ever happened to racing in Cup. And I really think Winston Cup, or the late model stock division, would have never been what it is without Winston. So, but what happened was when we went to Bartonsville, Dale Earnhardt Jr., I tell people this, and they look at me and say, I don't believe that. I said, well, ask him. He may not remember what he's been to. My guys can tell you, because I had one guy that hated his dad, Dale Earnhardt, and I mean, he couldn't stand him. And I said, when he come over and Dale asked me some questions, and he said, don't help him. I said, say nothing about his dad. He can't help who his daddy is. I mean, you know, it's his dad, so I don't care how much you don't like him. It's his father. I won't say nothing. Mike, I said, bite your tongue. He said, come over. And he said, my crew chief told me to come over and want to know if you'd help me. Now, Dale Earnhardt Jr. was not the Dale Earnhardt Jr. is now. He was running Friday and Saturday night tracks, Myrtle Beach, and some of these places. And he wasn't doing that great. So he come out and he said, would you follow me for a few laps? And then, because I would pretty well run up front there unless we got in a crash, or, you know, we set a qualifying time that's set for 10 or 15 years from 80s to on up in the late 90s. You know, we was sitting on several poles there and just really had a lot of luck, but we got a lot of crashing, but we had a lot of luck and won there. So that's why it wasn't me, it's because my accomplishments there is the reason he was asking, and that was fine. So he goes out, and I follow him for about 5 laps, and he pulls over, and I motion him, he gets behind me, and he comes over, and what am I doing wrong? And and I was telling him, I said, well, you need to let the car, you're slowing up too much, you kind of got to let the car roll in, and you got to pull on it a little hard to the left. People say, I don't believe that. And I said, well, why would I lie about it? I mean, it's not a point to lie, that's the truth. That was the last time I ever talked to Dale Earnhardt Jr. The last time I ever talked to Dale Earnhardt Sr. would have been probably about 82 or 83. And I can't remember if it was after Darlington or Rockingham, but we was at the track the next week. And the way they did the points then, on one side of the garage, you'd have like 20 cars. It'd be first in points, second, all the way down to 20. Then you go this side, you know, it'd be 21 to 40. Well, see, Earnhardt was wherever he was in the points, 5th or 6th then. We were directly across from him, and we had our toolboxes kind of set back to back. Everybody would put their toolbox in a line. So I was sitting there, everybody took a lunch break, and we had some sandwiches. We were sitting there eating. He was actually eating a sandwich. He's sitting there, and he looks around, and he said, "Ronnie," I said, "Yeah," and he said, "You mind doing me a favor?" And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Last week when I come up to pass you, every time I come up on you," which would probably been about 10 times in the race, that's fine, he was laughing at me. He said, "Every time I come up on you, man, you crowded me." And I said, "Crowded you?" He said, "Yeah, you come up." And he said, "Man, you just come up and I drag." I said, "Man, you give you an inch, you take a mile." Talking about me, I said, "You the one's doing the drag?" And he said, "No, you need to give me a little more room when I come up here." This was like Darlington when it was tight in the corners. Or Rockingham when you go in 3, man, you could really mess a front runner up if you didn't back off and let him get down in the hole. And he was racing somebody, if it was like somebody was second and he was 20 car lengths in front, you could about mess him up, and the car in second could about run him down. And I just told him, I said, I just can't believe that you think I was. He said, "Yeah, you just give me a hard time." I said, "Well, I know what I'm going to do." He never spoke to me after this. Said, "The track's 2 lanes wide, so what I'll do from now, when you come up on me, now, Pearson and Bobby and them, I'll stay in the bottom lane. But when you come up, I'll run halfway on the apron and halfway on the first groove, and that'll give you a lane and a half on it. That'd be all right." Well, he got mad, and I said that. And I said, you get an extra half a lane than everybody else. And that guy, he never spoke to me again after that. So, but